Hi, it's Dwyer. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. It's January 13th, 2024. Let's talk boxing. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Let me open with just some comments about some big-time fighters going through some big-time situations. Well, Errol Spence is having a cataract removed from an eye, right? Just understand, Errol Spence has had eye problems before, some retinal issues in the past. Just understand, too, that Errol Spence had signed a fight contractually for the rematch with Terence Crawford, one of the most dangerous men in boxing, pound for pound. I have questions. Apparently, Terence Crawford has questions on whether that second fight ever takes place. Just understand, too, if you're someone who, appreciates Errol Spence, doesn't want to see him in harm's way, I believe the last thing you want to do right after eye surgery is to hop in the ring with someone who is as precise and as dangerous as Crawford is. Understand, Crawford won the first fight by stoppage. Understand, in that fight, Crawford first dropped Spence in the second round. Right? My advice to Errol Spence is to take softer touches right now. You need to pay close attention to the Errol Spence situation. Understand Spence's fight style is such that he's inflicting a lot of damage on an opponent, but he's there to get hit. Right? This isn't a fighter who goes through a fight and doesn't get hit. Let me also point out, too, that Errol Spence is all dressed up with nowhere to go. He stayed at 147 a bit too long. The contract with Terence Crawford held out the possibility for the rematch to be at 154. Well, understand, 154 has at least one boogeyman, and I'm not talking about Jermell Charlo, who's a good friend of Errol Spence and might not fight him for spiritual reasons. Let me just point out, too, I know Spence has said he would fight Charlo. I actually like the Charlo point of view, right? I need for people to think about the Klitschko brothers here. They were close brothers. Both of them held the heavyweight title. They did not fight each other, right? I'm guessing their lives now is a lot more spiritually fulfilling than it would have been had the two guys fought each other to determine boxing superiority in the family. Some fights are not worth having, especially when you have money already in the bank account, and this isn't a, how am I going to feed my family situation. But understand, 154 has a dangerous guy. He has one of the best left hooks in boxing, Tim Tszyu. Right? Let me point out that Tim Tszyu, I know when he's in the ring, he has a weird center of gravity. I know he stands a little bit high. At least it looks that way. This is a dangerous man. He would be one of the last men I would want a fighter coming off eye surgery to be in the ring against. So I'm wondering what Errol Spence does here. Understand, 147 has a boogeyman, Jaron Ennis, right? Let me also say, too, the other guys at 154, let's say Errol Spence goes to 154 and decides, hey, I'm not going to fight Tim Tszyu, certainly not right away. Who could blame me? This is a new division. I'm not going to fight my boy Jermell Charlo. He's a good friend. I don't want to hurt the brotherhood that we have. So I'm going to go venture off, and I'm going to fight who? Erickson Lubin? Dangerous fight. Sebastian Fundora? Dangerous fight. Right? Just understand, 154 has a lot of guys who are hungry, who want titles. Right? If I'm Errol Spence, I would pivot here. And I know this sounds ridiculous, and I don't blame guys for being warriors. But I would ask myself whether continuing on in the sport is even worth it. Right? This is a hard wear and tear fight style that Spence has. This isn't Spence's first eye injury. Spence himself now is saying, look, the reason I got hit by Terence Crawford so repeatedly in that last fight was because of vision problems. Understand, there are many fighters who find themselves getting hit a lot more because of age and reflex problems. Right? Marvin Hagler leaves the stage at 32 years old. Andre Ward not too long behind him. Right? Just understand, those are great fighters. Right? Like Errol Spence. If I'm Spence, I really need to look at the guys at 154. Ask myself if I want to fight them. 160 has a boogeyman. Janabek, Alan Kaluli. Right? I would ask myself, gee, do I want to let my body go and fight them? Right? I'm just telling you, if you have eyes that have had problems, it's better to leave the sport too early than too late. You've had some guys go blind mid-fight. Layman Brewster comes to mind. Let's shift gears here. Now, a fighter who I have said here should go to the heavyweight division because I believe he would be simply too fast, too agile for many heavyweights. And let's be clear about the heavyweight division. You've had men like Ezzard Charles, like Roy Jones, like Michael Spinks. Jump to the heavyweight division. Understand, Ezzard Charles beats Joe Louis. Right? Understand, Michael Spinks beats Larry Holmes. In other words, these were guys jumping into the heavyweight division and taking out Hall of Fame champs. Right? Well, I thought that cruiserweight champion, and let's also remember, you didn't have a cruiserweight division back in Ezzard Charles's day. Right? Ezzard Charles, for those keeping track, Roy Jones, Michael Spinks, they jumped from light heavyweight. This would be like the winner of the Arthur Beterbiev of Callum Smith fight saying, okay, I believe I can compete at heavyweight. Here I am, let's have at it. Right? And you have a whole other group of heavyweight champions who, let's face it, were small for the heavyweight division. Jack Dempsey, Rocky Marciano, right? Guys with punches, guys who were getting stoppages in the heavyweight division. Well, my point is you have a guy, he's too fast. He's too young. He's in his 20s, folks. Understand, you got an old man set up right now at heavyweight. Right? You tell me the fighter under 30. Tyson Fury. Alexander Usyk. Zhilei Zhang. Deontay Wilder. The guy who just beat Wilder, Joseph Parker. Who's under 30? Folks, no one. Right? You have a lot of elite heavyweights over 30. This guy's under 30. He's fast. He's a southpaw. He has great legs. He moves around the ring. Right? How many big clunky heavyweights are there out there? Right? Joe Joyce, how big is he? Zhilei Zhang, how big is he? Filip Ergovic, how big is he? You got a lot of tall guys at heavyweight. Imagine a guy who is a traditional heavyweight size, right? 6'2". Let's not pretend that this fighter I'm talking about is a little guy. He's 6'2". Just imagine a 6'2" guy who's a southpaw who is slick with it. In other words, he's not a stationary southpaw. He's over here, I'm turning this way. He's over here, I'm turning this way. He's nasty, right? A hole in his game is the fact that he's a bit too much like Josh Taylor, right? You know the mindset. This is the guy who, it's not enough to beat you. He has to embarrass and hurt you. Right? That cost him, by the way, when he fought Maris Briedis. Right? Broken jaw. In other words, hey, you can be nasty, but still have the common sense to realize the guy you're fighting hits too hard. Well, let me just say, Jay Opetaia is a guy who I believe should be getting heavyweight checks. I'm not talking about sparring partner checks. I'm talking about main event checks, title fight checks. Right? You saw what Southpaw Usyk, another slick southpaw, has been able to do in the heavyweight division. Hasn't he cashed enough checks? Right? 2 fights against AJ, a fight against Daniel Dubois. Right? I'm just talking about the big fights. I'm excluding the Derek Chisora fight. I'm excluding the Chaz Witherspoon fight. Right now he has 2 fights against Tyson Fury, Folks, this guy's robbing the bank at heavyweight, isn't he? Right, well, Jay Opetaia, folks, is younger. He's younger than Usyk. He has great legs like Usyk. Understand, he's unbeaten. That Maris Briedis broken jaw fight, Opetaia won the fight, right? Maris Briedis has himself to blame. Briedis gave away too many of the early rounds. We'll see what happens there. Let's just say if I'm advising Opetaia, I say, hey man, forget Maris Briedis. Consider yourself lucky that you got stripped of the belt. Ring Magazine still honors you as the Cruiserweight champion. Fans off the street like me honor you as the Cruiserweight champion. I would say, now let's go get this money against these big clunky heavyweights. Right? Daniel Dubois was frozen when he fought Alexander Usyk, to the point where Usyk gets off the canvas. Legal or illegal, Usyk gets off the canvas. And then, of course, Usyk was able to seize control of that fight again. And, of course, Daniel Dubois, after Usyk gets off the canvas and after Usyk recovers, Daniel Dubois looked slow, looked sluggish, looked confused. How would that change if he were to fight Jay Opetaia? Well, understand the way life works. Older people will exploit younger people, won't they? Right? Younger people eventually get older. They think back on their lives and they say, damn it, I was exploited back then when I was in my late 20s, wasn't I? Right? Well, let me just say this. Tyson Fury needed a sparring partner for his matchup against a slick southpaw. Right now, Tyson Fury has some hardcore boxing people around him. Understand, it's a team effort over there. Right? So, of course, you have these Emmanuel Stewart disciple guys, Sugar Hill, Andy Lee. Right? They're studying fighters, folks. I saw an interview recently with Andy Lee where he's talking about the foot feints that Eastern European fighters have. Right? Think about that. You're talking about a heavyweight champ, well-funded, right? Tyson Fury has gotten some huge paydays. A heavyweight champ who has an ecosystem. You know, that ecosystem is such that Joseph Parker, his buddy, was able to walk up to him and say, hey, player, I'm about to fight Deontay Wilder. You fought him a number of times. What can a brother do? What can a brother do against Deontay Wilder? And was able to get valuable advice. Right? That's an ecosystem. You know the move Tyson Fury did. Tyson Fury sees a young lion out there on the edge of his forest. Right? Only this lion is, of course, carving people up in the cruiserweight division. And he says, Jay Opetaia, will you spar with me and help me prepare for Alexander Usyk? Now, Opetaia, and I understand the way it is, right? The heavyweight champ calls and you say, hey, you know, brother has to take this opportunity. If I'm going to be better, I might as well be in there against the heavyweight champ. Right? You know, that's the mindset. Let me tell you the way older people see it. Right? Okay, great. This brother is helping me prepare for my fight. Okay, excellent. I'm getting top-notch preparation, right? I have an unbeaten cruiserweight champion in here. I have a champion who I'm, using as a sparring partner. Okay, great. We get it. You know the other side of the equation. Brothers are cracking Jay Opetaia's code, aren't they? They're looking at Opetaia and moves that would catch an opponent who's unfamiliar with him off guard. Let's say Opetaia has some special sequence of moves that opens up a big-time left hand, his dominant hand, right? I'm telling you, Tyson Fury is making a mental note of all of that. All of that. From the sparring sessions. I'm guessing for some of the sparring sessions, Opetaia looks outside the ring and suddenly there are other people, maybe Joseph Parker, hanging outside the ring, right? Joe just looks like he's dropping in to hang with his crew. Right? Say, hey fellas, what's up? I'm just in the neighborhood today. I have no doubt that Joe is taking notes. right? Every elite heavyweight wants to get an edge. Now, don't get me wrong. Opetaia himself is taking notes, right? There's a lot of strategy going on here, right? But just understand, Opetaia is one of the guys helping Tyson Fury prepare for his match against Alexander Usyk. I have mixed feelings about it, right? Because quite frankly, when you're a speed guy, when you're unorthodox, right? Southpaws come across as different to orthodox fighters, right? When you're a speed guy, especially, and you're a little bit herky-jerky, it's the flaws that make the diamond. It's the idiosyncrasies that make it tough for an opponent. Let's just say Tyson Fury, by having Opetaia as his sparring partner, is not going to be as unfamiliar with Opetaia should the guys meet up down the road. Right? Let me also say this too. I question whether there's going to be a rematch for the Fury-Usyk fight. One of two things is going to happen, folks. If Tyson Fury comes in and if he's just too big for Usyk, and if Usyk gets methodically beaten up, worse yet, if Usyk gets stopped, and let's remember, Tyson Fury stops Dillian Whyte, for example, right? If Usyk gets stopped, that's going to make selling a second fight very difficult, whatever the contract they have, right? Understand, people are willing to pay money to avoid substantial losses, right? If the first fight's one way for Tyson Fury, the big man, good luck selling a second fight. Well, let's talk about the opposite, what I think might happen. Let's say Usyk comes in and he's just too fast for Tyson Fury, even after Fury is trained with Opetaia. Let's say he's too fast for Tyson Fury. Let's say Tyson Fury looks as bad as he looked against Francis Ngannou, right? Here again, Tyson Fury's not coming in on some glorious win streak. No, Tyson Fury's just had a fight that has people thinking, wow, has this brother lost a step? Right? Those in the Fury camp have a mantra of, Tyson Fury didn't take the fight seriously, right? Whenever you start hearing that, they're problems, folks. They're problems. If Usyk shows us how big the problems are, if Tyson Fury suddenly looks like an old man, even though you and I know chronologically Usyk is older, right? But Usyk hasn't had the problems that Tyson Fury has had. And let's just say, not being an expert, just looking at the guys, Usyk seems to always be in shape to me. Tyson Fury, not so much, right? If the smaller man dismantles Tyson Fury, does Fury want to exercise the rematch clause? He might not, right? This might be a situation where he takes a step back and says, hey, I got to get back in the saddle here, right? A guy in his his first pro fight went the distance with me, landed more power shots. Now here's a guy who comes up from cruiserweight, who now has beaten me. So let's just say, if in fact the rematch doesn't take place, Opetaia, especially after getting heavyweight sparring, might actually decide, you know what, I don't want these cruiserweight paydays. I want heavyweight paydays. Let me just say, with legs like Opetaia's, he would give Andy Ruiz a problem, right? I don't believe he has the hand speed advantage, believe it or not, on Andy. Although Opetaia has quick hands, right? Let's say that's a quick hand fest. But I believe he'd be able to move away from Andy. That fight should be easy to sell for promoters as well because, of course, that Andy-Joseph Parker fight looks like it was a location fight. So you have Andy fighting Opetaia. If they have it in Australia, I'm just telling you, that's a sellout fight. Andy against Luis Ortiz. Ortiz throws people off because he's a southpaw. Well, guess what? Excuse me, not Andy, Jay Opetaia. Opetaia's a southpaw. Right? Opetaia might be too mobile for Luis Ortiz. Wouldn't the hand speed gap on Opetaia versus Joe Joyce simply be too great? Doesn't Joe Joyce really depend on landing that left jab? Didn't he have a problem landing it against southpaw Zhili Zhang? Now here he would have a southpaw moving a hell of a lot more than Zhili Zhang. Joe Joyce without his jab would have a problem coping against Jay Opetaia. I'll concede Joyce is heavy-handed and would only have to land a few shots. The question is whether he lands those shots. Finally, if Daniel Dubois looked as clueless as he did look against southpaw Usyk, how could he improve on that performance against Jay Opetaia? Right, even if Opetaia doesn't want the heavyweight title, Opetaia has to realize that there are a lot of big paydays at heavyweight waiting for him. Again, this guy's 6'2". Also, boxing history has had smaller men jump up and beat guys like Joe Louis and Larry Holmes. Right? Food for thought. So, keep an eye on this Fury-Opetaia sparring situation. It also shows you that Fury is serious, and he has to be, because he's about to be tested. He's serious about being ready for this Usyk fight. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Let me say this too. Anthony Joshua just beat Otto Wallin, who's a cagey southpaw. I know you couldn't see it in this fight because Joshua was magnificent, throwing that straight right to Wallin's body, and was athletic in being on his front foot and trying to slug Otto Wallin, right? If Anthony Joshua, who of course has made a lot of money in the sport, he's one of the sport's box office kings, if Anthony Joshua calls Jay Opetaia and says, hey, player, I have my own big fight coming up, right? Doesn't have to be the Ngannou fight. It could be the fight after that if he calls Jay Opetaia up and says, hey, player, can you help me prepare for this fight? I hope Opetaia says, nah, look, hey, Jay, I have a lot of respect for you. I think you're a great fighter, but our paths might cross down the road. Right? I hope Opetaia by then has the common sense to say, nah, player, as good as you are, I'm going to go my own way because I need at least the element of surprise should you and I ever meet in the ring. Right? Sometimes the answer to a great offer is no. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.